It took exactly 47 seconds for a 5-year-old girl to vanish without a trace. One moment, Emma Carter was twirling in the backyard with her stuffed bunny. The next, she was gone. No scream, no sign of a struggle, not even the sound of a gate creaking open. Just silence. An eerie, bottom-dropping-out kind of silence. When her mother called her in for dinner, it wasn't panic that crept in first. It was that annoying little instinct every parent knows, the whisper that something doesn't feel right, even when logic insists everything's fine. Maybe she was hiding. Maybe she didn't hear. Maybe she was being 5. But the whisper didn't go away. It grew louder. And that whisper turned into a scream. The Carter home sat near the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac in Evansville, Indiana. A nice neighborhood, safe, the kind of place where nothing bad is supposed to happen. The swing set in the backyard still rocked gently, moved by a breeze that carried no answers. Emma's stuffed bunny lay face down in the grass, alone. Melissa Carter ran from room to room, her voice cracking as she shouted her daughter's name. No answer from the closet. No answer from the basement. No response from the bathroom. She flung open every cabinet, even looked behind the couch. 10 minutes later, Melissa was on her knees, her fingers trembling as she dialed 911. "My daughter's gone," she sobbed. "She was just in the yard. I don't know where she went." Sergeant Daniels had been finishing his paperwork when the call came through. Dispatch reported a missing child, last seen at 5:32 p.m. That gave them a 15-minute window. The clock was already ticking. Daniels grabbed his vest and gave a short whistle. From the back of the cruiser, his partner responded. Rex, a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois with a sharp nose and sharper instincts, jumped down and waited at the door like a soldier reporting for duty. "Let's go find a kid," Daniels said. The dog's ears twitched forward. He understood. Neighbors began flooding the cul-de-sac. Teenagers with flashlights. Retirees checking sheds and under porches. Someone started a prayer circle. Someone else offered to print flyers. But Daniels knew better. The first hour was everything. When he pulled up in front of the Carter home, the scene was already spinning into chaos. Melissa was curled on the lawn, a blanket over her shoulders. An officer was trying to ask questions, but she kept glancing toward the backyard, like Emma might reappear if she just stared long enough. Daniels didn't waste time. He clipped on Rex's harness, gave the command, and showed him Emma's bunny. "Find her," he whispered. Rex sniffed the toy once, gave a short whine, then lowered his nose to the ground. The trail didn't lead outside. That was the first surprise. Rex ignored the back gate, bypassed the flower beds, and trotted straight into the house, his nails clicking against the hardwood. Melissa jumped up, trailing them into the kitchen and down the hall. "She's not in there," she stammered. "We checked everything. Closets, pantry, we even looked under the beds." Rex didn't care. He moved like a bloodhound with a mission, scanning from room to room until he reached the laundry room. And then he froze. He let out one low growl and sat down, tail stiff, body tense, eyes locked on the washing machine in the corner. Daniels followed his gaze. "Has anyone opened that?" he asked. Melissa blinked. "No, I don't think so. I didn't even think to, Before she could finish, Rex gave a sharp bark and lunged forward, pawing at the washer's door. The sound made everyone flinch. Daniels leaned in and tried the latch. It didn't budge. Let's pause right here. If stories like this move you, stories of loyalty, instinct, and the animals who save us when we least deserve it, please take a second to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. It's your support that keeps these powerful moments alive. "What kind of washer is this?" Daniels asked. "A front load. It's new. It auto-locks once a cycle starts." Melissa's voice trailed off as the realization hit her. Daniels crouched. "Did anyone use it today?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I think I threw in some towels earlier." Another officer, a younger guy named Riley, grabbed a flashlight and pressed it to the glass door. The view inside was murky. The drum turned away just enough to obscure what might be inside. "I can't see," Riley said, "but something might be there." Daniels didn't wait. He radioed for tools. Within 60 seconds, 2 responders were in the room, one with a pry bar, the other with bolt cutters. Melissa collapsed to her knees. Oh God, please, no!" Rex stood back now, quiet but vigilant. His tail didn't wag, his ears didn't twitch. He was still, as if he already knew the outcome. The washer gave a creak, then a pop. The door swung open, and everyone froze. There, tucked into the curve of the metal drum, was a tiny, soaked figure. Emma. Her eyes were shut. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her face was flushed crimson. Her little arms wrapped tightly around the stuffed bunny. But she was breathing. Daniels reached in first. "She's alive," he called. "Get medics, now!" Riley moved fast. The paramedics, who'd been standing by outside, rushed in. Oxygen, blanket, stretcher. The entire room turned into a ballet of quiet urgency. Melissa clutched her daughter's hand and whispered her name over and over as they wheeled her out. Daniels stayed behind with Rex, who gave one long sigh and sat back down beside the washer. "You're something else," Daniels said softly. "You really are." It turned out the washer had been in standby mode. Emma, likely playing hide-and-seek, had climbed inside and pulled the door shut, out of sight, out of sound. The machine had auto-locked. Heat built fast inside the metal drum, enough to weaken her but not kill her. If Rex had taken even 2 minutes longer, the ending wouldn't have been this one. Daniels thought about that all night. He thought about it while logging his report. He thought about it while pouring a cup of black coffee in the empty station break room. He thought about it while looking at Rex, curled under his desk. Not every dog is born a hero, but some just know where to look. The waiting room lights buzzed quietly overhead, a soft, droning sound that no one noticed until everything else went silent. Melissa Carter sat on the edge of a plastic chair, clutching a styrofoam cup of hospital coffee she hadn't touched. Her hands trembled slightly. Her knees bounced without rhythm. Across from her, the stuffed bunny, Emma's favorite, lay on the seat like a tiny casualty. Its ears drooped, one of them torn at the edge. It had only been 2 hours since the ambulance left their driveway, but it felt like another lifetime. A nightmare she still hadn't woken up from. The door at the far end of the hallway finally opened, and a pediatric nurse stepped out, followed closely by a tall man in a faded uniform and a dog that turned every head. Melissa stood up immediately. "How is she?" she whispered. The nurse gave a tired but kind smile. "She's stable. Dehydrated, overheated, but responsive. She woke up a few minutes ago and asked for you." Melissa let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Then she looked at the officer. "You found her," she said, her voice cracking. Or he did. She turned toward the dog. Rex didn't bark, didn't move, just stared up at her with calm eyes that held something almost human. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to," said Sergeant Daniels. "Just be with your daughter. That's what matters." They said goodnight, half an hour later. The hospital agreed to keep Emma overnight, more for monitoring than emergency care. Melissa sat curled up next to her in bed, watching her chest rise and fall like she was learning to breathe again herself. Daniels stepped outside, the night air cool against his neck. Rex walked beside him, leash in hand, though it wasn't needed. They both needed space, not words. The cruiser was parked near the far edge of the lot, under a flickering security lamp. Daniels opened the passenger door and let Rex hop inside. But he didn't get in immediately. He stood there a moment, staring off at the empty fields beyond the lot. His jaw tightened. The image of Emma curled up in that washer, quiet, limp, pink cheeks pressed against cold steel, would not leave him, because he'd seen it before. Not with a stranger's child, with his own. 12 years ago, on a rainy day not much different from this one, Daniels had been on patrol when the call came in. A 3-year-old girl reported missing from a trailer park just outside Lafayette. Her name was Lily. She was his daughter. He hadn't seen her in months. His ex-wife had custody. It was messy, emotional, painful. He was working too much, drinking too much, saying all the right things but doing all the wrong ones. When he got there, it was already too late. The washer had been old, barely functioning. The door hadn't locked, but it didn't need to. She'd gotten stuck anyway. They said she hadn't been in there long. They said it was peaceful, that she probably didn't feel much. They said everything a grieving parent doesn't believe. That was the last day Daniels ever worked a shift without purpose. 2 years later, he joined the K-9 unit. Rex was his third partner, and the best. Dogs don't ask questions. Dogs don't blame you. They just show up and do the work. Daniels got in the cruiser, shut the door, and started the engine. The next morning, he returned to the Carter home. Not in uniform, just jeans and a jacket. Rex followed at his side, tail relaxed, nose twitching at the familiar smells. Melissa opened the door, surprised. "She's still resting," she said, then added, "But come in." The house was still a mess. A few chairs overturned, dishes in the sink, a toy or two abandoned mid-play. But there was a kind of peace to the place now, a quiet that didn't feel hollow anymore. "I wanted to check in," Daniels said. "Make sure you're okay." Melissa nodded. "Better than I was. Emma asked to go back outside and play, like it never happened." He smiled faintly. Then she asked what no one ever had. "What made you look in the washer?" Daniels glanced down at Rex. "I didn't," he said. "He did." "No, I know that, but why? Why did you let him? Most people would have ignored it, or figured it was a false lead." Daniels didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the laundry room and looked inside. The washer sat there, power cord unplugged, the drum open like a wound. "When I was a young cop," he said slowly, "my daughter died in one of those." The words came out flat, almost clinical. Melissa's breath hitched. "I wasn't there in time. I didn't even know she was missing until the radio call went out." He reached out and touched the washer door gently, like testing a scar. "I couldn't save her, but Rex saved yours. That's what matters." Melissa put a hand over her mouth. She didn't know what to say, and that was okay. Some stories don't need long explanations. The press got wind of the story by lunchtime. A 5-year-old rescued by a police dog. A front-load washer. A miracle K-9 with instincts sharper than any machine. Melissa turned down interviews. Daniels avoided the media entirely. But someone posted a video from across the street. You could see the moment Rex lunged at the washer door, howled, and refused to leave. It went viral in 3 hours. By dinner, Daniels was getting texts from other departments. By midnight, Rex had his own hashtag, @RexTheRescuer. The next day, Daniels and Rex returned to work like nothing happened. Calls came in, assignments were dispatched. Life moved on, but something felt different. Melissa sent a letter to the department, handwritten. Inside was a photo of Emma holding Rex's paw at the hospital, her little face smiling and alive. On the back, in pink marker, she'd written, "Tell your dog thank you for finding me. My bunny says thank you too." Daniels kept the letter in his locker and the photo in his wallet. That night, he and Rex sat in the cruiser, parked at the edge of a local park. The sun had just set, the sky lavender and orange. Kids played in the distance, laughter echoing faintly through the trees. Daniels reached down and scratched behind Rex's ears. "You made sure this one made it home," he murmured. "You did what I couldn't." Rex rested his head on the seat, eyes half closed, peaceful. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some just wear fur and a badge on their collar. It started with the smell. To most people, it was barely noticeable. Just a faint, sour scent drifting across the breeze on an unusually warm spring afternoon. But to Rex, it was everything. Sergeant Daniels had been walking him through the elementary school grounds for a scheduled K-9 demonstration. Nothing fancy, just a feel-good PR day arranged after the story about Emma went viral. Kids were already gathering behind the orange cones the faculty had set up, eyes wide, phones out. Daniels had done these 100 times. Show off obedience, a little tracking, maybe a bark and hold on a fake suspect in a padded suit. The parents loved it. The kids adored Rex. It was usually a good day. But Rex wasn't focused. As soon as they walked past the school's rear dumpster, his body language changed. His head snapped toward the building. His nose twitched rapidly. His posture stiffened, and he gave a low, barely audible whine. Daniels noticed it immediately. "What is it?" he asked softly, unclipping the leash out of habit. Rex didn't bolt. He didn't bark. He just stared at the back wing of the school building, specifically a small maintenance room near the gymnasium. Then he began walking toward it, slow and deliberate, like he was trying not to spook something. Daniels followed, heart ticking a little faster. Inside the school gym, Principal Harland was giving her welcoming remarks to the crowd. "We're so honored to have Sergeant Daniels and the incredible Rex here with us today," she beamed. "As you may have seen on the news, this amazing dog helped locate a missing child just last week." "Shoes!" Daniels cut across the gym floor without waiting for her to finish. He didn't mean to interrupt. But when Rex started pulling with determination, ears forward, tail stiff, he followed his gut. The janitor, a man named Chuck with a radio on his hip, turned toward him. "Something wrong, officer?" "Where's this door lead?" Daniels asked, pointing at the narrow side door Rex had stopped in front of. "Old boiler room. We keep cleaning supplies in there now. Broken furnace. It's locked." "Open it," Daniels said. Chuck hesitated. "I mean, sure, but, Rex let out a bark that wasn't friendly. Chuck flinched, pulled out a key ring, and fumbled for the right one. Daniels reached for the latch, heart pounding now. He didn't know what he was expecting, but after last week's call, he trusted Rex more than he trusted logic. The door swung open with a metallic groan. The room was dark, maybe 8 by 8 feet, lined with shelves of old paper towels, bleach, and tools. At first glance, it looked empty. Rex didn't move. He didn't enter. He just sat down at the threshold, growled low, and stared toward the far right corner behind a stack of unused floor mats. Daniels stepped in carefully. That's when he heard it. A muffled thump. Then another. Then a cry. "Help!" It was barely more than a whisper. Daniels shoved aside the mats and found a large blue storage bin tipped over on its side. It had holes drilled into it. For air, maybe. Inside was a boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. He was sweating, shaking, and his mouth had duct tape across it. His wrists were zip-tied. Daniels didn't shout. He didn't freeze. He just dropped to one knee and started cutting the boy loose with his pocket knife. "You're safe," he said. "You're okay." The boy collapsed into his arms, sobbing silently. 30 minutes later, the entire school was cordoned off. Media vans had already started circling. Parents were crying. Police were questioning every adult who had access to the building. The boy's name was Tyler Monroe. He'd been reported missing that morning by his foster mother, just a few hours before the event. No one had noticed he had been taken. No one had realized he'd been hidden in the very building hundreds of kids were walking through. But Rex did. Daniel stood beside the cruiser while Tyler sat inside with a blanket and a juice box. EMTs were checking him out. He wasn't injured, just shaken and dehydrated. Rex sat on the grass, tongue lolling out slightly. He didn't act like he'd just saved another life. He acted like he was waiting for a treat. Daniels looked at him and shook his head. "You're 2 for 2, buddy." Then he gave him a piece of beef jerky from his pocket. Back at the station, The captain asked the question everyone was thinking. How the hell did he know? Daniels shrugged. Could have been body odor. Could have been plastic. Could have been fear. Fear has a scent? Daniels nodded slowly. To them, yeah, it does. The truth, of course, was that Daniels didn't really understand how Rex did what he did. Science could explain part of it. Scent receptors, training, familiarization. But some of it was more than that. Intuition, the kind of thing that can't be taught. The kind that can't be put on paper or explained in an after-action report. He thought back to Emma, barely breathing in a locked washer. Then Tyler, bound and hidden in a janitor's closet. Twice, Rex had zeroed in on danger no one else could see. And twice, he'd brought a child back alive. The Monroe family showed up that evening. Tyler ran straight into his foster mom's arms, crying so hard he shook. Daniels stood off to the side, watching quietly. The foster mother turned to him and hugged him hard. Then she knelt and hugged Rex. "Thank you," she whispered into his fur. Rex didn't react. He just leaned into her gently, the way he always did when someone needed comfort. Later that night, Daniels got a voicemail. It was Melissa Carter. "I saw the news," she said. "You and Rex, again. I just wanted you to know that Emma's doing great. She sleeps with Bunny every night. She tells people she was saved by a super dog. I think she's right." He played it twice before deleting it. Then he leaned down and rubbed behind Rex's ears. "Not a bad week," he muttered. The next morning, there were letters waiting at the precinct. Dozens. Children from the school. Parents, veterans, rescue workers, even one from a retired fireman in Ohio. Each envelope contained a simple message. "Thank you, Rex." Daniels pinned the best ones on the corkboard behind his desk. He never pinned his own awards. Just the kids' letters. Just the truth. And that truth? Sometimes heroes have cold noses. Sometimes they walk on four legs. And sometimes they carry more than scent on their backs. They carry the weight of second chances. The problem with putting your past behind you is that sometimes it doesn't stay there. Sergeant Daniels learned that the hard way on a rainy Thursday morning, the kind where the sky never fully wakes up and the streets glisten with a permanent film of regret. He was filling out routine paperwork in the squad room when a name on the call log stopped his pen cold. Marcus Riker. He hadn't heard that name in over a decade. Hadn't wanted to. And now it was back, in black ink and all caps, on a domestic disturbance report. The dispatcher's notes were minimal. Ex-con. Aggressive toward neighbor. 2 small children reportedly seen crying on the lawn. Call came from a tenant in the building. The address? 4 blocks from the very trailer park where Daniels used to live. Back when everything fell apart. He didn't tell anyone what the name meant to him. He just stood, clipped Rex's leash to his collar, and said, "We're taking this one." Rex looked up from his blanket like he'd been waiting all morning. The building was a 3-story walk-up with faded beige siding and rusted mailboxes. Daniels recognized the layout instantly. It was the kind of place people passed through, not lived in. Temporary, transitional. The kind of place you stayed until you figured out something better. If you ever did. Riker's apartment was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hall. Daniels climbed the steps slowly, his hand resting on his service belt, not out of fear, but memory. Rex stayed close. When they reached the top landing, Daniels knocked with practiced rhythm. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. But Rex suddenly went rigid, his tail horizontal, his ears forward like satellite dishes. He moved toward the door and began sniffing around the bottom crack. Then he let out a single sharp bark. Daniels trusted that bark more than most people. He radioed dispatch, possible child in distress, requesting backup, proceeding with caution. Then he called out, "Marcus Riker, this is law enforcement. Open the door." A beat of silence. Then something crashed inside. Daniels didn't hesitate. He backed up and kicked the door in with one hard boot, the frame cracking like a gunshot. Rex pushed through first, low to the ground and alert. What they found was chaos. Furniture overturned. Trash everywhere. A broken beer bottle on the floor. And in the far corner, 2 children, maybe 5 and 7, huddled beneath a coffee table, clutching each other, eyes wide with terror. Rex stopped near them, barked, then turned toward the hallway. Daniels followed him fast. "Riker!" he shouted. "Get on the ground, now!" They found him in the bedroom, trying to crawl out the back window with a crowbar in hand. Daniels drew his weapon. "Don't!" Riker froze, turned, laughed. "Well, hell, if it ain't Daddy Daniels, thought you'd be dead or retired by now." Daniels Antus didn't blink. "Down, now!" Riker raised his hands. "Relax, I didn't touch the kids, Things got loud." Rex growled deep in his throat. Not a warning, more like a verdict. Daniels cuffed him on the floor. Back in the living room, EMS checked the kids. No visible injuries, just scared. Their mother had apparently left them alone with Riker, her boyfriend, while she went to work. Standard welfare check turned into something darker. Again. Daniels crouched down and handed the little girl a juice box from the patrol car kit. "You're safe now," he said gently. She nodded and pointed to Rex. "Your dog's not scared." "Daniels, my tours, sometimes." Daniels smiled. "He never is." At the station, after the paperwork and statements, Daniels sat at his desk staring at the incident report. He couldn't shake the irony. 12 years ago, when he was spiraling after the loss of his daughter, Marcus Riker had been the one who supplied the downward spiral. Illegal guns, cheap pills, blackouts. Things Daniels didn't even remember fully, only through the flash of police reports and court transcripts. He'd nearly lost his badge. Would have, if it hadn't been for a captain who believed in second chances, and a canine unit that needed handlers. And now Riker had resurfaced, like a ghost with his own gravity trying to pull him back in. Later that night, Daniels and Rex were back on patrol. The windows were cracked just enough to let in the scent of wet pavement and pine mulch. The radio buzzed with routine chatter. Traffic stops, noise complaints, a minor fender bender. Quiet shifts like this used to bore Daniels. Now they felt like borrowed grace. At one point, he looked over at Rex, curled in the passenger seat, eyes scanning the dark like he could see what others missed. "You know," Daniels murmured, "you saved me just as much as those kids." Rex gave no response, just a blink, a breath, a presence. The next day, Daniels was called into the captain's office. Apparently, Riker had filed a complaint. "Claims you were aggressive. Says you've got a vendetta." Daniels didn't argue. He just slid a printed photo across the desk. A body cam still of the 2 kids shaking under the table, Rex in the frame beside them. "I'll take the write-up," he said, "but I won't apologize for getting there fast." The captain stared at the photo, said nothing, then nodded slowly. "Just keep doing the job, Daniels. The rest will sort itself out." 2 days later, the children were placed into emergency care with extended family. Daniels got word through a caseworker that the little boy had started drawing pictures of the dog who roared like a lion. He hung the crayon sketch on his corkboard next to Emma's thank you note and Tyler's school letter. Each one was a reminder, a face, a reason. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the strip mall parking lot, Daniels took Rex to the edge of the old trailer park, his old trailer park. The place had changed. New siding, new fences, a little playground where the old trash pile used to be. Daniels stood there quietly, hands in his pockets. "I almost lost everything here," he said to no one. Rex sat beside him, ears flicking as the wind passed through. "But I didn't, and maybe that's why we do this." He reached down, scratched behind Rex's ear. "I can't change the past, but maybe we can stop someone else's future from falling apart." Rex leaned into him, not for a command, just to be there, because the truth was, some ghosts do come back. But so do the heroes, especially the ones who don't need words to speak, especially the ones who bark when no one else does. It started as a soft rumble on the edge of town. Nothing unusual, Just another spring thunderstorm rolling over southern Indiana. April's way of shaking off winter. The wind picked up. Leaves danced in spirals across the roads. People pulled in lawn chairs, shut windows, checked their weather apps. Sergeant Daniels had just finished a welfare call with Rex when the radio crackled. Be advised, tornado watch in effect for Vanderburgh County. Heavy wind gusts moving southeast at 35 miles per hour. EMS and fire units are prepping for possible response. Daniels glanced out the windshield. The clouds had turned that eerie shade of green-gray that every Midwesterner knows by instinct. Rex, in the passenger seat, lifted his head and let out a quiet whine. Yeah, they felt it too. By the time the tornado sirens went off, it was too late to get anywhere else. Daniels and Rex pulled into the parking lot of an old Methodist church that had recently been converted into a community shelter. People were already gathering inside, clutching backpacks and kids and pets. Some were crying. Some were calm in that Midwestern way. Stoic, prepared, waiting for it to pass. Daniels helped a disabled man up the stairs and asked if anyone had seen the shelter manager. She went back to grab her son from their trailer a few blocks down, a volunteer said. Hasn't returned. That detail snagged on Daniels's mind like barbed wire. Why didn't she bring her son in the first place? He looked down at Rex. Let's go, he muttered. The dog didn't need an explanation. The wind was howling by the time they reached the trailer park. Rain slapped the windshield sideways. Limbs crashed down in the road. Debris scattered like angry confetti. The mobile homes weren't built for this kind of storm. Some were already rocking on their supports. Daniels pulled up in front of Lot 14, barely visible through the sheets of rain, and saw what he feared most. The roof had caved in. He slammed the cruiser into park and ran toward the collapsed structure, Rex at his side, leash dragging. The air smelled like wet plywood, gas, and something else. Earth disturbed in a violent way. The smell of destruction. "Hello?" Daniels shouted. "This is law enforcement. Is anyone inside?" No response. Rex darted ahead and began sniffing furiously along the edges of the wreckage. He circled once, twice, then froze. Head lowered, tail stiff. He barked, sharp and insistent. Daniels climbed over the edge of a busted window frame and shouted again. That's when he heard it. A faint cry. A boy's voice, buried but alive. "Help!" What followed was a blur of adrenaline. Daniels radioed for immediate rescue, gave the coordinates, then dropped to his knees and began digging through insulation, splintered boards, drywall, and twisted siding. Rex clawed beside him, working like a machine, nose guiding him like a magnet to the boy. Another bark, this one louder, urgent. They were close. Daniels pulled back a fallen cabinet door and saw the face. The boy, maybe 6 or 7, was curled beneath the remains of a kitchen table, protected only by a sagging metal vent hood and a miracle. His arm was pinned under a piece of flooring, but he was conscious. Dirty, bleeding, scared, but alive. "I got you," Daniels said, reaching in. The boy sobbed. Rex licked his cheek. Rescue crews arrived minutes later. They extracted the boy, braced his arm, and whisked him to the ambulance. Daniels followed behind, soaked and bruised, but upright. Rex jumped into the cruiser on his own, shaking off water like a dog who'd just been out for a swim, not a life-or-death rescue. The shelter manager, Maggie Sloan, arrived just in time to ride with her son in the ambulance. She grabbed Daniels's hand through the window and sobbed into it. "I couldn't get to him," she cried. "They wouldn't let me through the barricades. I thought I'd lost him." Daniels said nothing. He just looked toward Rex and nodded. Back at the station, word spread quickly. One of the local news anchors had been sheltering at the church and caught it all on camera. Daniels and Rex running into the storm while others huddled for cover. By midnight, the footage had over 2 million views online. Again, Daniels hated the attention. But Rex? He loved the fan mail. The next day, the shelter hosted a small thank you lunch for emergency responders. Maggie brought her son, arm in a sling, hair still matted with storm dust. He brought Rex a giant bag of jerky strips and a hand-drawn picture. In crayon, he'd drawn a giant dog wearing a superhero cape, standing on top of a smashed trailer, barking at the sky. Across the top, in wobbly letters, "Thank you for saving me. You're braver than Batman." Daniels pinned it beside all the other notes in his office. Later that week, Daniels stood in front of a group of new K-9 recruits, young handlers, all with fresh dogs, all trying to learn what made a good team. "Most people think it's training," he told them. "Obedience, commands, control." He looked down at Rex, who lay calmly at his feet, eyes half closed, soaking in the praise without ego. "But the truth is, it's trust." He paused. "Your dog will go into the places you're afraid to look. And when he stops and barks at something that doesn't make sense to you, don't question it." He looked up at the young handlers. "You trust him, because sometimes that bark is the only thing standing between life and death." That night, Daniels sat on his back porch, sipping hot coffee as rain returned, gentle now, rhythmic. Rex lay beside him, paws crossed, tail flicking occasionally. "You ever get tired of being a hero?" Daniels asked. Rex didn't respond. Didn't have to, because some heroes don't need words. They don't need medals or capes or headlines. They just need to be let off the leash and told, "Go find them." And they do, every time. They called it the Medal of Valor. It was gold-plated, heavy, shaped like a six-pointed star, with the state seal in the center. Sergeant Daniels held it in his palm after the ceremony, unsure what he was supposed to feel. Around him, people clapped. A few wiped away tears. The governor gave a polished speech about courage, service, and the power of K-9 teams. Cameras flashed. A standing ovation followed. But Daniels only cared about one thing. Rex, sitting beside him, tail calm, tongue lolling slightly, head held high. If anyone deserved the medal, it was him. After the ceremony, they were ushered to a small reception hall where dignitaries and police brass mingled with local officials. Rex attracted attention immediately. Dozens of photos, belly rubs, even a slice of steak snuck from someone's plate. Daniels stood near the back, sipping club soda and making small talk with a couple of officers from neighboring counties. That's when he saw them. State Senator Carlton Bellamy and his daughter, Vanessa. They looked like they stepped out of a political campaign poster. Sharp suits, immaculate hair, all smiles. Daniels hadn't seen either of them in over a decade, but he hadn't forgotten. Vanessa Bellamy was the prosecutor who had pushed for Daniels' suspension all those years ago, when he'd spiraled after his daughter's death. Back when he was drinking too much, showing up late to shifts, one step from losing his badge. And her father? He was the one who wanted Daniels fired publicly, wanted a clean slate for the department during his re-election campaign. But they'd failed. Daniels got clean, and now he was the one getting medals. Senator Bellamy approached, smile fixed in place. "Sergeant Daniels," he said, extending a hand. "Hell of a story. 2 rescues in 1 week, a storm response, and now this medal. I'd say you've come a long way." Daniels shook the hand, jaw tight. "I'd say so." Vanessa stepped up beside him. "We're actually working on a state initiative for expanding K-9 resources in rural communities. Would love to get your input." Daniels didn't blink. "Would you now?" "Absolutely," she said, tone sugar-coated. "You're a hero now. That kind of public trust goes a long way." There it was, the real reason they were here. They didn't care about the medal. They cared about the image, the story, his story, and they wanted to borrow it. Back at the precinct the next day, Daniels sat at his desk flipping through an article draft sent over by a local newspaper. The headline, "From Broken to Brave, the Redemption of Sergeant Daniels and his hero, Dog Rex." It was well written. Too well. The kind of piece that someone massaged behind the scenes. It framed his backstory with the neat bow of a redemption arc, glossing over the hardest parts, dramatizing others. Daniels tossed it aside and sighed. "You okay, Sarge?" asked Officer Riley, the rookie. Daniels nodded. "Yeah, just tired of being someone's poster boy." Riley looked at the photo pinned behind Daniels's desk. Emma's thank you note. Tyler's crayon drawing. The sketch from the storm shelter kid. "They don't think you're a poster," Riley said quietly. "They just think you showed up when nobody else did." Daniels smiled at that. Rex gave a short bark from under the desk, like he was agreeing. That night, Daniels got a call. Not from the mayor, not from Bellamy, from a mother named Chelsea Monroe. "Tyler won't sleep without Rex's photo by his bed," she said. "He keeps telling his classmates he wants to be a police dog when he grows up." Daniels chuckled. "That's a good ambition. And I needed to say thank you again. I know people are pulling you in 100 directions now, but the only people who matter are the ones you saved." She was right. He hung up, walked to the living room, and sat beside Rex on the floor. The dog laid his head in Daniels's lap. "You don't care about headlines, do you?" he whispered. Rex didn't move, didn't need to, but trouble always finds its way back. 3 days later, Daniels was called into the Internal Affairs office. "Someone submitted an anonymous report," the captain said, "claiming you failed a field sobriety test in 2013 that was never documented." Daniels leaned back slowly. "I passed that test. You know that." "We do. But if it goes public, especially now, it'll get messy." Daniels didn't need to ask who submitted it. He knew exactly who would dredge up a sealed report. People who wanted his story, but didn't want him. That night, Daniels sat on his porch, flipping through the worn notebook he kept in the drawer next to his badge. Inside were handwritten letters from the families he'd helped, scribbled notes from survivors, even one written by his late daughter, Lily, back when her handwriting was crooked and backwards. "You're my hero, Dad." He closed the book. Rex rested beside him, head against his leg. "I'm not perfect," he murmured, "but I'm not who I used to be." The wind rustled the leaves in the oak tree overhead. The porch light flickered, and in that silence he made his decision. The next morning, Daniels walked into the press conference. Senator Bellamy was there, smiling, waiting to announce a new statewide canine initiative inspired by local heroes. Daniels stepped to the microphone before they could begin. "I appreciate the honor," he began, "but I need to say something first." The room quieted. "I was broken once. I made mistakes, the kind you don't come back from without help. I wasn't a hero then, but I had a dog who didn't care about my past, only where I was going." He looked at Rex, seated beside him. "He saved more than lives. He saved my soul." Murmurs spread through the room. Daniels continued. "I won't be your symbol, but I'll keep showing up. For the kids, for the families, for anyone who needs someone to show up when it matters." He walked off before they could clap, because he wasn't there for applause. Back home that evening, he took Rex for a walk down by the river, where fireflies danced and kids skipped stones. No cameras, no speeches, just the quiet rhythm of boots and paws on gravel. As they reached the edge of the old footbridge, Daniels paused. "Funny thing about being a hero," he said softly. "You don't get to choose the moment. It chooses you. And sometimes it comes with a price." Rex leaned into his leg, and they stood there together, man and dog. Not for glory, not for fame, but for something that couldn't be bought or sold. Honor. Thank you for following this journey. It means more than you know. Now, I want to ask you, what do you think makes someone a true hero? Is it courage, second chances, or simply being there when no one else will? Let me know in the comments.